sword, he always brings a pigeon to test it. As long as the pigeon can lose all its flesh without dying, then the sword is considered a success. And the man's identity is not simple, because he is the legendary #1 swordsmith. The swords he forges can each be sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, and some people are even willing to kneel at his door for 3 days just to obtain one of his swords. But at the peak of his sword forging career, he disappeared from the public eye, choosing to hide his true identity and become an apprentice in an ordinary craftsman's shop. And the reason he did this was simply because he discovered that the shop owner was the son of his own master. In order to pass on his master's sword forging skills to him, he chose to work here. On this day, to complete the city lord's order, the shopkeeper urgently looked for an assistant swordsmith. Several apprentices heard that this matter was very important, and that it might even affect their own safety, so they were too afraid to go. When they saw the man nearby, it was as if they had an idea, and they immediately pushed him forward. Looking at the strong man before her, the shopkeeper's daughter agreed with the apprentice's recommendation and brought him to her father, planning to let him give it a try. But when the eldest apprentice saw the man, he disdainfully told the woman that he was just a newcomer he had recruited and that he didn't know forging at all. But the shopkeeper noticed the man's strong body, which was very suitable for forging, so he ignored everyone's objections and kept the man. He even told the man to choose a suitable forging hammer himself. The shopkeeper's daughter, seeing it was his first time forging, recommended that he choose a 10-pound hammer, but the man directly walked over to the largest hammer. The shopkeeper's daughter wanted to remind him to change it, because this hammer was made from meteorite iron and weighed as much as 1,000 pounds. The eldest apprentice beside him also spoke up to remind him, saying bluntly that many people, because of trying this hammer, had suffered serious injuries. But the man was very stubborn, wanting to pick up that giant hammer. Just as everyone thought the man would get hurt, he very easily picked up the hammer and even played with it in front of everyone. Just as everyone thought the man was going to use this hammer, he put the hammer down. The crowd couldn't help but laugh at him, saying he must have used up all his strength and couldn't lift any other hammer. But the next second, the man easily picked up a 500-pound meteorite hammer beside him. The shopkeeper's daughter thought the man was pretending to hold on, so she wanted to persuade him to switch back to the 10-pound hammer. But the man was very stubborn, holding the 500-pound hammer, and began his forging. The 500-pound hammer struck again and again on the inferior steel. Just as everyone thought the man couldn't last more than 10 strikes, he struck a full 100 times, and later on, he was even able to make one strike produce the effect of 2. The shopkeeper was immediately shocked, start to doubt the man's identity. But the inferior steel in his daughter's hands at this moment appeared with many cracks. The eldest apprentice wanted to remind her to stop quickly and to wait until the steel cooled before continuing, but the man refused, saying bluntly that this was the critical time to eliminate impurities, and continuing to forge would not cause any problems. Then he struck again, but he was again stopped by the eldest apprentice, who persuaded the woman to quickly put it into the water. The man wanted to stop it, but it was already too late. The eldest apprentice looked at the scrap steel before him and still wanted to blame the man for the mistake, but only the shopkeeper saw that this piece of steel had already become superior steel. If it had not been stopped, it would have become a fine sword. This made the shopkeeper even more suspicious of the man's identity. But at this moment, an apprentice outside told the shopkeeper that the city lord had arrived. He could only take the sword that had already been forged to face the city lord, leaving the man alone, staring at the scrap steel in his hands, lost in thought. On the other side, after the shopkeeper handed the sword to the city lord, when the city lord tried to chop at the meteorite iron, he was stopped by the shopkeeper, who bluntly said that his sword could not cut through meteorite iron. But such a sword made the city lord very angry, and he immediately wanted to smash the shopkeeper's store. But the shopkeeper begged the city lord to give him another chance. The city lord, however, had already lost his patience, and bluntly said he would cancel the shopkeeper's qualification to participate in the forging competition. Just at this moment, the man in the courtyard had already picked up that 1,000-pound hammer and began forging the scrap steel, until the sound of a giant dragon appeared, drawing everyone's attention. The city lord happily looked toward the forging courtyard and saw dark clouds climbing into the sky, and immediately wanted to take several people to go see. At this time, the man had already completed the forging of the sword. The city lord's son, Jack, looked at the sword in front of him, just about to try it, but was interrupted by a voice. Then everyone saw the shopkeeper's junior apprentice bringing the sword he had forged and appearing in front of them. He also wanted Jack to try his sword, but it was taken into the city lord's hand. With just a light swing, a distant rock was chopped into pieces. The city lord couldn't help but exclaim that this was a fine sword. He then told Jack to choose this sword, but Jack wanted to try the black sword, until the junior apprentice told him that the sword he brought was forged by the number 1 swordsmith. Only then did Jack give up his idea and took the sword from his father's hand. Little did he know the man standing nearby was the number 1 swordsmith himself, but he did not remember ever forging this sword. The shopkeeper, seeing this, still wanted Jack to try his sword, but as soon as he picked up the man's sword, the spirit within the sword immediately broke free. He looked in shock at the black sword on the ground and couldn't help but exclaim that it had already revealed itself, with a spirit of its own. Only with its own consent could it find a master. He wanted to recommend it to Jack, but was mocked by the junior apprentice, who said bluntly that a shop like his could never forge a sword with a spirit. He even made an even more excessive demand, because he wanted to take the shopkeeper's shop. Just as the city lord was about to agree, the shopkeeper at that moment proposed a competition with his junior apprentice. Although the junior apprentice agreed, he also laid down his own condition. The loser must